was an officer at the central bank, and he was killed again by Mr. Verdier. That's why I'm breaking it in now. Matthew Innes was a manager at the central bank, a deputy director for macrofinance and regulations and supervision at the central bank. Innes was a manager at the central bank, a deputy director for macrofinance and regulations and supervision at the central bank. If our people will recall, there was an issue of missing banknotes in Liberia. Banknotes in Liberia. And the Liberian government came and said, oh, there were no banknotes missing. And they called crew to come in. Crew did some findings and told them what to do. And then they said, based upon crew's finding, they will get 25 million US dollars to map up the excess liquidity that had gone into the Liberian market. Where did the excess liquidity come from if the money wasn't stolen? And Mr. Innes played two roles as head of that department. When the money was brought into the country, he took delivery and took it to the central bank. And he was instructed to take it to other places after it was taken there. But that aside, that's not the reason he was killed. The main reason he was killed had to do with the 25 million. Mr. Tue came up and said he has completed his mapping exercise. And he wanted to infuse the money through an accounting process that we have Mr. Matthew Innes to prepare records and documentation that the money was given to banks and it was infused into the economy through legitimate means. Mr. Matthew Innes said, no, but I haven't seen money. At least if I play a part in receiving the money and distributing it to the banks, then you can come and ask me to do that kind of report. But no, I didn't see the money. I don't know what happened to the money. And you want me to come and make a report that it was infused into the banking system? No, Mr. Tue, I cannot do that. As we all know from the outside, Mr. Tue went about and trying to account, and he was listing ghost names of money changers since he could not get it done through the banking process through Mr. Innes. He came up with a lot of ways in which he thought he could account for that money. But the money did not go through the banking system. So Mr. Tue went and made a report to Mr. Weir, the gangster in chief. We have said in my organization that Liberia is a gangster's paradise. He went to Mr. Weir and said, we are having a problem with Mr. Innes. So he agreed with Mr. Tue, finance minister, that he will make another attempt, and if he feels he should go to the bank governor at the time. He was Mr. Petrie.
Nathaniel Petrie.
Nathaniel Petrie. They went to Nathaniel Petrie. Nathaniel Petrie said, well, he's a professional man. It's difficult for me to influence his work. And banking thing is specific. Banking is process. Banking is procedures. It is difficult to rely on the banking process because there should always be proper documentation. However, I work with Ines and I will speak with him, but I cannot promise anything because Mr. Ines is a professional man. Honorable Petrie went to Mr. Ines. Mr. Ines told him, this is the process, this is the procedure, this is where I start. I cannot violate my ethics. I cannot violate my code of professional conduct. So there's nothing I can do other than making my report as it has been brought to me. Mr. Ines went his way and he was fired from the central bank, firing by a decision to retire him, and that process went on. Mr. Ines went home and continued to work on his report. Then comes one Mr. Cletus, who works directly in the office of the finance minister, Mr. Twe. Mr. Twe told him, I need you to call Mr. Ines and tell him to come to my place on this date. I need to meet with him. When he leaves his work, let him come. And Mr. Ines, being a professional man, he was doing his report. He didn't want people peeking into his report. So he chose Saturdays to do his work when the office is quiet and nothing is going on and he's not distracted. He will make his he will prepare his report. So Cletus, tell Mr. Ines to come at my place when he leaves office. Let him come to my house for a discussion. Meanwhile, the finance minister has a property, a house in Africus. He sent other occupants of the house out, his wife and children. They were having a vacation in Africus. But prior to inviting Mr. Ines to his house, the plan to kill him was hatched. Mr. Verdier Taylor was told to come from wherever he was out of town at the bunk mines, at the gold mines where he was working, to come in town. Mr. Minister Tour, along with, by the way, this operation, Mr. McGill was left out because McGill's wife is related to Matthew Innes, Vivian Innes. So he was left out of it because of the connections. So a meeting was held at Mr. Jefferson Koji's office. In that meeting was Jefferson Koji, one Samura Urukoli. He's, I think, a deputy minister also at the Ministry of Finance. And they met with Mr. Koji. The minister gave Mr. Koji $50,000 for the operation to permanently silent Mr. Innes. Mr. Koji took that money, called Valley in town, gave Valley a portion of the money, gave the police director $15,000 of the money so that he can do the cover-up operation when it is done. Meanwhile, the big guys distributed the map up exercise money between themselves. Mr. George Weah, president, Mr. Samuel Twe, minister, Mr. Jefferson Koji, mayor, Mr. Samurai Wurukoli, Deputy Minister, Mr. Janga Ko, Comptroller General, Mr. Trukom Pui, he participated. He got his share of the mapping exercise.
Minister of State without portfolio.
Minister of State without portfolio. Mr. Magay, who was Minister of State proper, they divided the money amongst themselves. And then Koji was given what he needed to carry out the operation and assure that Mr. Innes was silenced for good. Before that happened, Mr. Minister went to the president, like I said before. But the president made an interesting remark that told indirectly or directly, Mr. Minister, you have to take care of this thing permanently. He said, I don't want to hear about this money anymore, this map up exercise. You have to find a permanent solution to it. I don't want to hear it anymore. And when the minister left, Mr. President, he went straight to Jefferson Koji and they hatched the plan. The police director had his 15,000. So as soon as Mr. Innes got at the minister's residence, he sat down and the minister said, I'm going upstairs. I will see you later. I'm coming back. As soon as the minister left, the assailants got involved. They were waiting to carry on the hit. And they beat on Mr. Matthew Innes, broke some of his bones, crushed his fingers, beat him mercilessly. They beat him. And when he was weak and overpowered, they injected him with some substance to disable him so that he wouldn't be effective. That's the kind of man he is. He was in a position of, in law, we say suspended sanity, suspended animation, where you are not active at all. Then they took him to the death scene. They had, if you listen to the police report at the time, they said he was coming from work. Coming from work 1 o'clock in the morning when he went to work on Saturday. They took him to the death scene and staged an accident. Mr. Verdier drove a blue pickup, and that is the pickup. We hope the pictures can be put up. We are looking for the owner of that pickup. From our information, Mr. Taylor drove that pickup, but he doesn't own the pickup. We want to know who owned that pickup. And if we don't succeed in getting somebody to come up and own on to it, we will do more and further investigation. So, Mr. Vali Taylor and one Mustafa drove the car of Mr. Innes to the scene, and Vali drove the pickup. He was accompanied in the pickup by Mr. Jefferson Koji, and they went to the scene and decided to stage an accident. How was the accident staged? Please, Mr. Keller, not Mr. Keller, please, Mr. Innes at his car, and then the truck will come and hit. Mr. Innes was drowsy. He had lost his composure. He has lost his strength. He was beating, so they could not even get him to stand for even 1 minute. So the pickup was driving at him. By the time the pickup got nearest, it was just a few meters away from his car. He was already dropping, and so the pickup hit the head. That's where he got the blunt injuries to his head. But he was as good as dead by the time he was taken to that scene. And afterwards, and the police director was there. He drove right behind Jefferson Koji and others, having received his $15,000. After the operation, around 1 in the morning, that's how they took upon themselves to take the young man's body to the funeral home. Normally, if somebody is involved in an accident or there is trauma or collision, as they said, he was found on the street, you want to notify family members immediately. But they took upon themselves to take the body to the funeral home. The police director, Jefferson Koji, Verdier, and Verdier's companion, Mustafa. So the Mustafa Fawaz. Mustafa Fawaz, by the way, is dead now. But there was another occupant, Sulu Ban, another operative. They all took the body to the funeral home. There is a trend of accident, hit and run that is running through the modus operandi of this government. When we talk about the other auditor, you understand, you see the same pattern. He was taken to the hospital. They alone, no family members, taken to the hospital. And sometimes these people are still alive, they kill them when they get to the hospital. But that's another story of another auditor that will come alive. And that's how it went with Mr. Matthew Innes. He was killed very terribly. His entire body was beaten up with stakes, with clubs, with everything they could lay their hands on. And then he was put before his car, and Verdier was told to come and hit him. These perpetrators are all in our midst. We know them. That's the situation.
Wow. Wow.